Thank you. On behalf of the Education Academy and the Kappa Delta Pi International Education Honor Society and the Future Teachers Club on campus, we'd like to welcome you and also our guest speaker from Queens College, Dr. Franklin Turner. I've worked with Dr. Turner for the last maybe 4 years at Queens College. And when I was brainstorming with Dr. Spradley, how many of you are students with Dr. Spradley? Ed students? I was brainstorming with her in the summer, about maybe getting a guest speaker from Queens College to talk to our students and our faculty and staff on campus. And she said to me, Dr. Turner is good. Speak to Dr. Turner. He'll be great. Actually, the words that she used were, she said, Dr. Turner is the bomb.
It's the bomb.
So make sure you speak to Dr. Turner and see if he will come. So I asked him, actually emailed him, and he said, sure, when do you want me to come? So we set it up, and here's Dr. Turner today. He's fantastic. He is very caring about his students. He has a wonderful background. Many of you might have read the emails that I sent out with a brief biography of Dr. Turner, so you know what his history is about, what his philosophy is. And so I would like to turn the floor over to Dr. Turner, because he has a lot to say and a lot of information to give us.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Gosh, they're restricting me with this mic. So we're going to talk about the achievement gap today. Toys. So I can't use it here. It's not going up there. There it is. You can see a little red. We're going to talk about the racial and socioeconomic achievement gap. Normally when we talk about the achievement gap, normally people look at it as a black-white issue, which I will, but I also will include people of different socioeconomic statuses. Okay? I look at the achievement gap from a systematic view of the achievement gap. A systematic view is just simply looking at all aspects that influence it, not just one. The first would be healthcare. Healthcare. And when I mean healthcare, I mean access to healthcare. Okay? So there's two scenarios that you have. People from low socioeconomic status, in many cases, have a hard time accessing healthcare for two reasons. One, they don't have a type of job that affords them those types of benefits. And if they do have that type of job, they live in a community where it's harder to access, and I'll be more specific about that. 75% of the doctors in the United States, 75%, 3/4, however you want to look at it, are located in high socioeconomic neighborhoods. So if you live in a poor community, you have a 25% chance of having a doctor in your community. So even if you have medical insurance, it's going to take you longer to see a doctor if you stay in your community. So let's look at that in the realms of education. If you're a child, you wake up Monday morning and you have an earache, and your parents do have insurance, but you live in a poor neighborhood, how long is it going to take you to see the doctor? Statistics say about 3 days. So if you have to endure 3 days with an earache, what happens when you go to school? You're not paying attention. You're paying attention to your earache and why your mom's making you go to school versus actually focusing. So that's one scenario. Two is if you need glasses. If you need glasses, who's paying for your glasses? Okay? Insurance if you have it. If you don't have insurance, you don't have anyone who's paying for your glasses. So you might go an extended period of time without having glasses. So for instance, if you're in kindergarten and you need glasses and it's not figured out that you need glasses because you haven't gotten your eyes checked, you've wasted a school year. Or you were already probably behind in the first place. Okay? So healthcare has a significant influence on the achievement gap. Next, I have the environment. The environment. If people who live in poor neighborhoods are exposed to certain types of people, in many cases, and people who live in high socioeconomic status are exposed to other types of people. For instance, if you go to a high socioeconomic status, if you go into that community and you have a child whose parents, let's go to Brooklyn, Let's go to the Huxtables. If your dad's a doctor, your mom's a lawyer. What kind of friends do you think we'll go to Theo. Theo Huxtable, the son of the Huxtables. What kind of friends are his parents going to have? What type of professions? Doctors, lawyers, professionals, people who went to college. So their role models, they're tangible role models. The people they see, the people they touch, the people they talk to, their tangible role models are going to be professionals. So if that's what you're surrounded by, what's the conscious and unconscious message that you're receiving on a daily basis? That better go to college. I better go to college. Now, if you grew up in a poor community, your parents don't have a job or they have menial labor jobs, what kind of people are those kids exposed to? Same types of people, right? Role modeling is incredibly important, right? If you want to become a thoracic surgeon, the only way you're going to know about it is if you're exposed to one, or at least exposed to the field, okay? If you grow up in a community where basically everyone around you is underachieving, and the only people you see are successful are drug dealers, basketball players, baseball players, football players, what do you want to be? One of those, okay? So the environment has a huge impact. That's on that aspect. The other aspect is, when you think of factories, when you think of highways, what kind of communities do you think of? Industrial communities. And the communities that are near those communities are poor, right? You don't see highways going through affluent communities in New York. But here's the problem with that. Diesel emissions, the fossil fuel emissions from the factories, those are carcinogens. They cause asthma. Children with asthma miss about 30% of the school year, especially if it's not controlled in some fashion by a medical professional, right? Kids are significantly more likely to have asthma in an urban environment than in a suburban environment. So the environment that you live in can greatly influence your health. Lead paint is directly correlated with learning disabilities. Where do you find lead paint? Older houses. The similar types of houses that haven't been remodeled because they're in poor neighborhoods. So your environment has a huge impact. Last but not least, educational system, okay? There was a point in this country, somewhere around the 60s, where they started to build highways that made it easier to access Westchester County, so people could move out to White Plains. They could move even further out to Orange County. When those people moved out of there, where did they come from? New York. And when those people moved out, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. With that went school teachers, went principals, went people who paid taxes. And who was left behind? Mostly poor and middle class, and then the affluent that decided to stay. So that is one of the things that has had a huge impact on the educational system. If you go out to an affluent community in North Jersey, in the northern suburbs of New York, do they have alternative route teachers out there? No, they don't need to. In many cases, they have no problems attracting teachers. Maybe in the sciences and math, but they don't have a problem attracting teachers. But in New York, we do. We have alternative routes. We have a hard time attracting people to come here and be a school teacher, right? So an example of this is, how many of you can remember, maybe you had this, maybe you didn't, when you were in elementary school and your teacher whipped out something you were going to read, a book, and you all had the book. And then the teacher said, you're going to read sentence 1, you're going to read sentence 2, you're going to read sentence 3. You kind of remember what that was? It's called round robin reading. So what happened? So when the teacher said, you all the way in the back, young sir, what's your name? Yes, sir. Anthony. So Anthony, if the teacher said, you're going to read the 10th sentence, what is Anthony going to do? What's that? He's going to count down. I'm not going to look like a fool. I'm going to go practice. So he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he goes down to the 10th sentence, and what does he do? He reads it over and over and over again until the 9th sentence, and then he reads it. What's the problem with that? Yeah, he's not exposed to the 9 sentences before. So that means it's a significant amount of words that he's not exposed to. So I make that connection is, in many cases, people who are doing an alternative route, they're going right into the classroom without formal training to be a teacher. So they're using techniques that do not work in the classroom. Instead of choral reading, echo reading, things that are proven to be successful reading techniques. That's why it's important to have a certified teacher in the classroom. Teaching is a profession. Not everyone who has a high school degree, high school diploma, who's been in school many people think they could walk right into a classroom and become a school teacher. I am a former 7th grade teacher in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Trust me, not everyone could just walk right in and be a school teacher. I learned the hard way. Okay. So a couple things to talk a little bit about in practice what it is I talked about in the previous slide. White children are more likely to be read to or told stories to. And this also breaks down in socioeconomic lines. If you're of high socioeconomic status, you're more likely to read to your children. Okay? Exposure to books early is incredibly important. How middle-class parents read to their children is very different than how poor people read to their children, low socioeconomic status people. Here's case in point. If I sit there and I say, excuse me, what's your name? Samia? How are you, Samia? So if I go to Samia and I'm a middle-class parent and I go, okay, so I read a couple pages of the book, how do you think of the book? And you say, it's great, right? And then I go, what do you think is going to happen next? And she says, well, you know what? This kind of reminds me a little bit of our summer vacation last year. I think this, and this is going to happen. So one is I'm making connections with her. I'm saying that you're reading a book for fun, but you could also use what you're learning to the outside world. A poor parent, when they read, they ask very definitive questions. What's your name, right here, young lady? Joyce. So a parent of low socioeconomics will sit there and go, what's the main character's name? Where do they live? Very rudimentary questions, very straight to the point. Nothing open-ended, nothing that's engaging them. Okay? Conversation differences between socioeconomic status. Parents of a higher socioeconomic status, within a certain time frame, an hour, will speak about 2,000 words in that time frame. Their poor counterparts will speak, it was about 1,000, and their poor counterparts will speak about 800 words a minute, okay? If you take that over the course of infancy to when they start to school, the kids who are of the higher socioeconomic status will have more than twice the vocabulary than their low socioeconomic status and poor counterparts. That's the start of the achievement gap. That is the start of the achievement gap. The exposure to words. The exposure to written and oral language. The exposure to written and oral language. In my humble opinion, that's the start of the achievement gap. Okay. Children need opportunities to build on spoken language by talking and listening. Okay. So this means actually having dialogues. So one of the questions that I'm not very happy with when I get it at home is, well, why, Daddy? Why? And then when I grew up, it was the famous line, because I said so. Right? Because I said so. I at least do it in sentences. Because riding your bike on a highway is incredibly dangerous, and because I said so. Right? I engage in conversation. I encourage to respectfully, keyword respectfully, question. There's nothing wrong with respectfully questioning. Well, if I do it this way, I might be able to accomplish the task differently. I can live with that. I can't live with you, big dummy, I want to do it this way. That's not respectfully. So even with your students, train them to question, but also train them to do it in a respectful manner. Engage in conversation where they could have a definitive back and forth dialogue. Okay? So after that being said, what I kind of gave a caveat to is at 5 years old, a 5-year-old who enters school with more exposure to words, written or verbal, will have an easier time completing academic tasks than students with less exposure. So if you start kindergarten, and your parents, not only did they read to you, but they read to you in a manner where you were sitting with them and you were following along while they were reading, so you were actually seeing the text. They were engaging you in questions about the book. They were making connections. They actually saw you read. They saw you read for pleasure. They saw you read for work. They saw you read for school. This would all put a child in a better situation to come into the classroom and learn. Like again, when I was in college, I used to think with the achievement gap, teachers were the problem. Then when I first became a 7th grade teacher, I thought elementary school teachers were the problem. Then when I started to meet parents, then I realized the problem was much bigger than I thought it was. It was partly teachers, largely family, largely the environment that they came from. They all were working together to not be a very beneficial situation for the kids. So in terms, Black and Hispanic 3rd graders were less likely than white and Asian children to reach a high level of reading proficiency. By the end of the 8th grade, African American, and this just need to change, African American Black, okay, Latino, and poor students of all races are 3 years behind their wealthier, predominantly white peers in reading. That's significant. That is correct. It's unconscionable is what it is, okay? So you got 3rd grade, 8th grade. Only 1 in 50 Hispanic and Black 17-year-olds can read and gain information from specialized texts. That is powerful. But I didn't stop there. I went to college. White college seniors were more proficient at prose, document, and quantitative literacy than Black college seniors. So the achievement gap started at home before school even started, and it goes all the way through college. The achievement gap is there. Yes, ma'am?
Isn't that creating labels and creating
Yes, correct, is what I'm talking about. The comment is the school or the neighborhood structured to keep Black and Latino kids from being proficient in school? The way the systematic approach that I'm talking about, the answer is yes. The answer is absolutely yes. Okay? All right. So I do a lot of my research in literacy, so I wanted to throw these in. There's a thing called the Matthew effect. The proficient reader gets better while the non-proficient reader stays the same. Normally, you really see this around the 3rd grade. At 3rd grade, if the child's a proficient reader, they will continue to get better. But that kid who's struggling will continue to struggle. They will continue to struggle. As struggling readers progress through school, their problems become more difficult for teachers to alleviate. One of the largest problems people will face as a teacher is when I was in the classroom teaching 7th grade, I had 7th graders that didn't know their times table. You just tell me to move, well, I'm blocking, right? You have 7th graders who didn't know their times table, and 7th graders who were ready for pre-algebra. How do you teach that? You can by differentiation. Now, how many teachers truly know how to do that? Not as many. Every teacher should know how to differentiate, right? Put this in perspective. Academic literacy is needed to access dominant culture. If you aren't proficient in reading and the ability to read documents and comprehend them, you won't be able to access things that you need. Say you want to go into business for yourself and you're trying to get a small business loan. You're not going to be able to do that by yourself. Even if you just wanted to get some type of government assistance, you're going to struggle with that. You're going to need to go somewhere to help access that. If you want to access dominant culture, you need to be academically literate. Feelings of competence in a domain are critical to engagement. If I told you, can I take this real quick from you? Thank you. I'm not going to read it. Don't worry about it. Your handwriting's good. All right. So if this is a test, and I said, everyone here, I need to take the test, and then I said, you're all going to fail, who's going to take the test? But if I give you this test and ask you to take it, and you look over it, and you go, I know this stuff, you're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to engage in the process. People don't want to go in a situation where they're going to fail, right? That's what happens to kids, and particularly when they get into third grade. They start failing because they're not equipped. You need to provide them several opportunities to be successful. We'll talk about that in a little bit, okay? Ways to decrease it, the achievement gap. To me, the number one way to decrease the achievement gap is teacher expectations. Teacher expectations. What do I mean by this? Anyone have any clue to what I mean by teacher expectations? Well, as a good teacher, sir. Close. You got, if I sit there and, what's your name? Susan? If I go to Susan and as a teacher, I treat her every day as if she is going to be the best student I ever had, what's going to eventually happen? She's going to eventually start drinking the Kool-Aid. She's eventually going to go, yeah, I can do this, right? But what's your name with Mickey Mouse on your shirt? Stephanie. But if I go to Stephanie and every day I treat her like she's the absolute worst student I've ever had, eventually she's going to start there and say, damn, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not as smart as I wanted to be. It's the expectation the teacher has for their students, all right? My daughter hit me to this. I wish I would have watched it when it actually was on. Let's see if I have to go here.
Back in school, Greg was catching up on more than his study.
So let me caveat this by saying, this clip, this is Chris, the main character's best friend who's white. He's been living with Chris for a couple of days. So as you see, he's dozing off in class.
What year did the American Revolution begin? Greg.
1942.
Greg, what's wrong with you? You're usually so alert.
It's because he's staying at my house for the week.
Oh my God, he's drunk? Did he have a 40 for breakfast?
I'm not drunk. I'm just not used to getting up so early.
Don't be ashamed. Chris's people have a history of being up when the rooster crows to go to work in the fields. Who could expect you to keep up? Go back to sleep.
She was dynamite.
Okay. So I help you out with what was going on there. So the young man was falling asleep. She went over and asked him why he wasn't engaged in class. Chris says, well, he's been staying at my house. So her response was, oh my God, is he drunk? Did he have a 40 for breakfast? Miss Murillo, who throughout the entire show automatically assumed Chris didn't have a father, that he was underachiever, and she played into all the stereotypes associated with blacks. And then I think towards the last season, she was trying to get him into one of the magnet schools in New York, which he got in, and then she was all upset to find out that he actually had a father and his parents made too much money to accept the scholarship. So she had been his teacher in elementary school and his principal in middle school and never took the time to really know who Chris was. She just automatically assumed that he was a black male, so he was an underachiever, right? If that's what you project onto people, it's called, hold on. Okay. All right. It's called self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? If someone projects onto you a characteristic, at some point you might actually take that characteristic on, okay? I am a product of special education, repeated the second grade, graduated high school with an incredibly low GPA. But my parents consistently told me that I was smart. So at least to some degree, my self-esteem was kept up, okay? But what I got from school was not that at all. They constantly wanted to put me in remedial classes, things along those lines, okay? But listen, if those of you are going to be teachers, not every student you have is going to be an A student. And that's okay. As long as they're trying their best, ultimately that's what's most important. Are they working to the best of their capacity? Okay? So if this child, this is stereotypes, not what you think, stereotypes. This child walked into, let's say, a second grade classroom, what do you think the teacher's gonna think? They're smart. Teacher's gonna go, oh, there's my math whiz. There's my science whiz. I'm good. You know what? Why don't you just go teach the class, right? But the problem is, we assume there is a large population, particularly Southeast Asians, who don't perform as well in school, right? So the problem with the stereotype is, what happens if you're that Asian child who doesn't do well in math, who doesn't do well in science? The teachers might not pay as much attention to you because of a stereotype. That's why stereotypes aren't good, okay? How about this cute little one? What would happen if she walked into a classroom? What would you think? Well, what would the stereotype be? She can't learn. Do your parents speak English? Can you speak English? You know, there's a whole bunch of stereotypes that could go along with this, okay? How about this young man? Thug. Oh my God, is he gonna take my purse if I don't look at it? I hope he doesn't beat anybody up in here. Okay? How about this? She can learn, especially English, history, but she can't do science and math. That's only for boys. God forbid, she wants to be an engineer. Okay? These are all expectations that teachers have as soon as kids walk into the classroom door, consciously or unconsciously. The fact that there aren't a lot of women in the sciences, that's just not because women woke up and said, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a nurse. There was unconscious and conscious direction away from certain professions, okay? Okay. How do we reduce this, other than changing your expectations? How much time is spent actually learning? There are things called a reading block. How are we doing on time? Okay. So there's a thing called a reading block. Most research would say a 90-minute reading block is beneficial for elementary school kids. In a 90-minute reading block, how much time do you think on average teachers actually spend with the kids reading? In a 90-minute reading block, what do you think the average time is? 5 minutes actually reading? You're actually not the best guess I've ever had. How much? 15 minutes. 15 minutes in a 90-minute reading block. What the heck are you doing in the other 90 minutes? Not what you're supposed to do. When you're doing a 90-minute reading block, you should start with some type of activity to get them ready, to get them prepared for reading. So say you're reading a book about the winter time. So some things that you want to engage in is you might want to sit there, and if you know that there are words in the story, talk about the words. Have the words on the board. Make sure they can pronounce the words. Make sure that they understand what they mean. Have them engage in other aspects. Sit there and say, well, when you think of winter, what do you think? Oh, I think of snowmen. I think of sledding. So you're activating memories in their brains, connections that will actually help them read the story. So if they come across a word that they don't know, they actually might be able, through sounding it out and those past connections, they might know the word, they just didn't know how to pronounce it. But that should only be 10 to 15 minutes tops. A lot of teachers a lot of teachers who teach in a 90-minute reading block will spend a vast majority of that time doing that pre-reading stuff. When you guys those of you who had driver's license, what was the best way for you to learn how to drive? To actually get out there and drive. What was the best way for you to learn how to play tennis if you played tennis? To get out there and play. What's the best way to learn how to read? To read. Spend the bulk of that 90-minute reading block reading. Whether it's individual reading, paired reading, echo reading, choral reading, whatever it is, read. Time on the test. A significant amount of time in the classroom is spent doing what? What does a teacher spend a significant amount of their time doing in the classroom? Disciplining. Disciplining. Classroom management takes you off task. Tell me your name again. Stephanie. So if I'm constant, Stephanie, sit down. Stephanie, sit down. Stephanie, sit down. That's time away from instruction. Number one thing that will help you with keeping your classroom management under control is your lesson planning. Creating lesson plans that are engaging, that have structured choice, meaning is you have units set up in your classroom and kids have an opportunity to choose, keeps them engaged and keep it moving and keep it relevant for them. Planning, in many cases, is 80% of classroom management. But there's other aspects of classroom management. If you have a child who's constantly misbehaving in your classroom and they don't have a telephone, what should you do? It's not a rhetorical question. It's a definitive question. We have to engage in your parents, but what do you do? All right, so we'll flip this. Ask me, Dr. Turner, what did you do? I went to their houses. I went to their homes. Significant amount of my kids didn't have telephones. So how was I going to communicate with the parent? I went to their house. It did two things. One is it made me significantly more empathetic to the child because I firsthand got to see how many of them, what they had to deal with when they left school. One. Two, even though the conversation with myself and the parent might not have gone the way I would have liked to, in many cases the kids, it changed my relationship with them drastically because they took it as a caring act. That I cared enough about them to take my time after school to go to their house. And in many cases, I didn't have behavior problems with them for the rest of the school year. Now, here's my safety caveat. I'm not saying that you should go to every child's house. I'm saying as a teacher, you should do what you need to do to make your children successful. Now, that was Franklin at 23. I'm not saying what Franklin at my age now. I'm not sure what I would do now. Not sure what I would do now. I'd like to think that my passion would lead me down the same path. Who knows? Okay? But you know what? To be honest, I'll tell you what I would do now. I'd make very good friends with the school police officer, and I might have what I might do is schedule a whole bunch of houses to go to and take that officer with me. Sounds crazy? I have a Ph.D. in urban education. I also have a Ph.D. in common sense, and I use both. Okay? Precise explanations of strategies used by good students on similar tasks. Who in here was taught how to be a student? Who in here was taught how to be a student? No one. We learn by a baptism of fire. We start school, we're beyond that. We need, whether you like it or not, to actually model what kids should be doing in the classroom. If it's the beginning of the school year and you see them not taking notes when they should be, you sit there and clearly go, this is an important part, and explain why it's an important part, and go, start writing. Model for them. Give them a very clear, concise reason why they should be taking notes and how a good student would do it, right? If someone in here wanted to go to grad school, I would clearly tell you, you need to do this, 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 and this. So if you want your students to be successful, clearly state, you need to do this, this, and this. And it's different for every student. For me, it was taking notes, going home that night, rereading my notes. If I couldn't read my chicken scratch, rewriting my notes. That worked incredibly well for me. That might not work for someone else, okay? But you need to provide strategies, okay? You get people who love small groups, and I know a lot of people who go, oh my God, they were teaching to the entire class. Well, let me tell you, some of us can do that. And some of us do that. There's nothing wrong with teaching to a large class, meaning is engaging all your students. You need to mix it up. So you might start off on Monday and you're teaching long division to your second graders. You're teaching them let's say short division. You're teaching them short division, and then you might do it to the entire class, but then when they're actually working on the classroom activities, that's when you break them out into groups, when they're actually practicing. Now, everyone normally likes to do, they'll take all their kids who are high performing and they'll match them with the low performing kids, with the hope that the high performing kids will tutor the low performing kids. But what's the problem with that? What's that? They do the work for them, or they get up, or the high performing kids go, when am I going to get challenged? When am I going to get helped? So that's why you need to change up the groups. Sometimes they need to be heterogeneous, meaning is kids of all ability levels, and sometimes it needs to be homogeneous, meaning is that all your high-performing kids are in one group, and then you space them out to where you have all the low-performing kids. That way you can differentiate in how you provide support, right? So as a teacher, you need to be able to be engaged here with your low-performing students, but I'm listening over there to my high-performing students. So if they start talking about Justin Bieber or whoever they need to talk about now then I sit there and I say, what's your first name again, sir? Anthony. So I'm here, I'm like, Anthony, stop talking about the newest rap music, right? You need to be able to multitask in the classroom. Okay. So modeling is you actually modeling how to do the work appropriately, whether it's going to the board, to them individually. And scaffolding is while they're actually doing the task, you're providing support. So modeling is actually how you do the task. So that could be if you're doing long division, doing some problems on the board. Maybe you taking manipulatives to a desk and actually using manipulatives on how to do it. But you're actually modeling how to do the activity you want them to do. Whether it's long division, short division, how to solve a problem of erosion, whatever it is. Okay? Scaffolding is when you give them activities to be able to learn the task. Number one thing as a teacher you need to be able to do is have your students take what they learned in the classroom and generalize it outside of the classroom. If they can't do that, you have failed as a teacher. I'm going to say that again. Generalize. They should be able to generalize what they learned in the classroom outside of the classroom. If you teach your students how to add and subtract, but then they go to the corner bodega and give the clerk $5 and they walk out without their change, that's a problem. But that's add and subtraction, right? So when I sit there and I talk about doing an authentic task, So if you really want them to be able to generalize adding and subtraction outside the classroom, give them play money. Give them abstract objects. So they could sit there and they realize that you could take adding and subtraction out in the class, out of the classroom. Now what you might want to do is say to them, is like let's look at subtraction. And go, why don't you go home to your parents and ask them, do they like how much FICA subtracts from their paycheck? And they'll have a nice long conversation about money that's taken out of the paycheck. And you could create a nice little dialogue between parent and child about money taken out of a paycheck. And that's a real world situation. Okay? Engage students with a great deal of purposeful teacher-student or student-to-student conversation. Engage your kids. They want to be engaged. They want to be talked to. But it's purposeful conversation. What do you think is going to happen next? What do I need to do to make sure you can do this book report? Right? Things along those lines. Teach your students how to talk to each other. How to one to share one idea with the other to share, and see how they can create commonality. Purposeful conversation in the classroom. Okay? Now, in many cases, this might have to be taught too. I'm not going to pick on people who are only children, right? Only children might not know how to share. They might, who knows, right? You might have someone who has siblings, but there might be enough years difference where they don't know how to engage in sharing, or they don't know how to talk. It just depends. But you might actually have to teach them how to do this. Okay? Use of longer assignments. So instead of just giving a worksheet that they're going to work on for a half an hour, give them an assignment that will last the entire week. Give them an assignment that might last the entire week. Right? It'll engage them for a lot longer, and it'll be a lot more fulfilling. And in doing that, especially if you're on the elementary level, assignments should integrate several academic areas, such as reading, writing, social studies, and science. So if you give a long-term project, include everything into it. Include everything into it. That way, so if you sit there and you go, they're going to do a report on science, there's going to be some reading element to it, there's going to be some writing element to it, okay? And there might be a social studies. What was going on when that person made that invention? Why did it need to be invented? Things along those lines, so they could think in a holistic manner. Okay. See if I can. All right. I talked about this earlier, so I'm not going to harp on it, but teachers should provide managed choice with students working on different tasks during the same learning activity. So again, if it's reading time, the suggestion is you can have a reading corner here where you have a little rocking chair, a little rug, and this is one station. A station in the back, which would be a listening station. So depending on the technology of your school, it could be computers, it could be iPads, it could be cassettes, it could be whatever you have in that corner. In that corner over there, it might be paired reading. It might be a reading group over here. But then you sit there and you say, okay, who wants to be here? And he'll get, me, I want to be here. And then you get that one child who doesn't get picked. And then they start to, they could do the little pouty face. I want to be with you, Mr. Turner. And then you sit there and be like, not today, but maybe tomorrow. Okay? Well, if they get if it continues, that's another lecture. Okay? Testing. Testing should consider assessing students' work more on effort and improvement than on academic status. This could get people in trouble. Because people normally, when they take a test, what would happen if you got a 95 on a test here at Queensboro, and then I sat there and I said, but you know what? Your effort was a B, you get a B. What's going to happen? It's going to be a problem, right? So just be mindful of how you work this. But there are some kids, they get an 85, but the effort they put forth was an A effort. You need to be able to equate for that. You need to try to find a way that you can equate for that that's fair and equitable and can work for your principal. that your principal can find acceptable. Okay. So I'll say one little last caveat on this. Especially even with testing for me at Queens, I normally, when I give tests, I give the test, and then I don't go over the test. What I do is I give it back to them and allow them to correct their mistakes. And I give them extra credit for it. And the thought process is, I'm training the next generation of teachers at Queens. I want them to know this material, right? So assessments aren't just to see where they are. It's to see where they are, and they haven't gotten 100. They need more exposure. So how can I give them more exposure? Give them the test back and let them look at what they got wrong and try to figure it out. And I do that in an open book status. So that way they have enough time, all the time they need, and they can look at what it is that they're not successful at. So assessments shouldn't just be looked at as something to give grades. It should be, oh, question. Okay. And perfect segue. How are you, Dr. Spradley?
Dr. Turner, good to see you.
Good to see you.
My question centers around assessment.
Yes.
An alternative assessment.
Yes.
Because I know testing and standardized testing has really been a heavy burden for many of our students and teachers and administrators. But what is your position on alternative assessments?
Within a classroom setting? Sure. I can give you an example. My mom will beat up on me for saying this. I graduated high school with a D average. Got a B in one academic class. It was history, junior year. I couldn't write. I didn't write well. My teacher, Mr. Stefanisco, one day called me after class and we started having a conversation. And he just said, Franklin, you're always engaged in class. I know you know the material. What's the problem? And I sat there and I'm like, the essays, man, killing me. So then what he said to me was, he was like, okay, so don't write essays. Write bullet points, right? Write your bullet points. So what he said to me was, listen, I can't give you an A because you're not doing it in the format that I require you. But at least this way you could get the maximum grade for yourself, right? So then I went from getting D's and C's to getting B's. And for me, that was huge. I mean, I looked down on my report card and I finally saw a B, and I'm like dancing the jig. I was like as happy as I could be. And, the only teacher I truly remember and loved, because he actually took the time to sit there and go, you know what? Blue books aren't working for you. Here's another way. So, and obviously not everyone has the time to take during a lunch and have maybe some kids come in and do the test orally, things along those lines. But if the traditional way of assessing is not working, then this is, when you go to a teacher who's more seasoned, you special ed teachers who you have a relationship with and care about the students and are knowledgeable, that's when you go to other colleagues in your school, or if you have to go out and figure out ways to change the assessments. Well, absolutely, I'm a fan of alternative assessments. Any other questions?
Isn't it true that teachers are going back to the usual story, and some teachers are A teachers and B teachers and B teachers before they?
Okay. So the question is about where do teachers end up going? Do quality teachers go into certain schools, and do teachers who might not be of highest quality go in others? And the answer is yes. I can't talk about New York as much because I'm not as familiar. I'm a little more familiar with Philadelphia because of personal experience. The way Philadelphia works is you take a test. Everyone takes an assessment, and they're ranked. That person who's ranked number one gets to choose wherever they want to go. And then it goes down after that. So then many cases, those teachers, not all, a lot of them end up choosing the elite schools to go to. But some do choose to go to the tougher schools. But yes, when you look at if you look at teachers who are alternative route, things along those lines, they end up going to lower performance schools for the most part.
Mm-hmm. A lot of
It's correct. It's partly the teacher's fault. Listen, I state this very clearly, right? If you take an incredibly low-performing school in Queens, an incredibly high-performing school in Queens, and particularly a high-performing school that's in a wealthy community and a low-performing school in a poor neighborhood, if you change the teachers, not a whole lot's going to change. I guarantee you on that one. In many cases, it's not the teachers as much as it is the environments that those kids come from and their school readiness. Now listen, I'm a psychologist by training. Nothing's 100%. Listen, I had a student when I was teaching, both her parents were strung out on crack cocaine. She ended up going from our middle school to an elite boarding school. So nothing's 100%. But it's not just the teachers. It's were the kids ready to go to school? Listen, I remember getting my Ph.D. While I was getting my Ph.D., I went to this school district and I helped them with a 4th and 5th grade math program that they had. I didn't know how they were doing their math. I had to go to the teacher and get the teacher's manual to figure out how to help these kids. So in many cases, all these newfangled curriculums we have, they're not helpful because the parents don't know. Even a parent who is somewhat educated can't help them because it's a different way to do it. Because the kids were doing like, you do the base, and then you do the times, and then you do this, then this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? So it's not all trust me, there are a lot of teachers who need to go. Absolutely. But it is larger than just the teachers. Okay? Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Anthony.
How do you think we start to begin to foster that relationship between the communities and the schools? How do you think we begin to foster that relationship?
That's a good question. Well, one is I'll answer in this category. High-performing schools normally have an exemplary principal. And one of the aspects of being a quality principal is making connections with the community, right? So some of that might be opening up your school to the community, actually leaving your school building and meeting with community leaders, seeing what kind of reciprocal relationship you can have with people in the community. But it's even a little bit broader than that. It's when I say community, I'm talking about grassroots leaders, I'm talking about business owners, I'm talking about not-for-profits, police, fire, everyone coming together. So to me, if I was a principal and I was trying to do that, I would try to create some type of consortium, or maybe we meet monthly and making sure that we're all on the same page, that the police are making sure that they are patrolling the proper areas at the end of the school so the kids are safe. Business leaders are helping us if we don't have the proper technology in the classroom to maybe help us get it in there. But to me it can start with a teacher. If you feel that you need to go out there and make that connection yourself, then you could go out and do it. But then there's going to be ramifications because your underachieving colleagues are going to be mad at you for going above and beyond the call of duty. Does that kind of answer your question, or? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
If the disparity starts before the kindergarten,
Yes.
what can we do about that?
Sure. The one thing I have right about some of the current administration is doing is school readiness programs need to start at birth. They need to start at birth, and they also need to include the parent. So we need to have the child coming, whether it's full daycare for the day, and then part of daycare is some type of academic engagement, but also part of that daycare is engaging the parent. Making sure the parent knows things that they could be doing with their child to get them ready for school. If they don't have money for books, age-appropriate books, then we're going to get them age-appropriate books. But the key answer to me is that question is, it starts at infancy and it's a holistic approach. And they also, not only do they need preschool and the parents need to be trained, they need full medical evaluations annually to make sure that they're reaching their benchmarks, the developmental benchmarks. So it needs to be very holistic. We have, oh, okay. Here you go.
I used to work in a family literacy unit in a nonprofit, but those programs past Head Start have been decimated.
Yes. So, but it's a very good question. It's a lot of the research, particularly about Head Start, and some people still debate this a little bit. Kids who are in Head Start, when they start school, are significantly more advanced than their kindergarten counterparts who didn't have Head Start. But the time they reach third grade, there is no statistical difference between the two.
But PACT,
Mm-hmm.
parents and families together, put together, that worked. But the Bush administration totally decimated those programs.
Well, you just said a curse word.
His own mother started those programs.
Mm-hmm.
She was big on family.
Absolutely. Correct. The key thing is, I mean, obviously, this administration is very made it clear that they want to start funding these early intervention programs. But the key thing about it is and they do, no one questions really whether they work or not. The issue is once they start kindergarten, it needs to continue to happen. So whether it's, extending the school day or whether having after school programs where they get help with their homework and other types of engagement. And then you also have the slip in progress that happens over the summer, right? So you have the studies that make it very clear, kids who have affluent parents, if they get tested in June with some type of academic assessment, when they come back in September, they test higher. And it's because of the type of summers they have. They go to museums, they go to libraries, they do other type of engagements where a lot of poor kids just hang out. And when they come back to school in September, they test lower. So that's one of the arguments for year-round schooling, is to create an environment where these kids aren't at least losing what they got. Is that a hand, or you stretching? You're stretching. All right. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. How many years? Depends. If you come to Queens and you do our daytime master's program, you could do it in the calendar year. You could do it in the calendar year. You could start the first summer session, and then that second summer session the next year, you could be done. Talk to me about it. I'll sell it to you. I'll sell it to you. One calendar year. But on average, if you come to Queens as an undergraduate and get certified with us, then you'll go out and you'll start teaching. And then at that pace, probably be about 2 years. If you're taking 2 classes per semester and some summer classes. It'll take you about 2 years. Now, the state mandates that you do it in 5. Right? Yes, Mr. Anthony.
You just said that the state mandates that you do your master's in 5 years.
If you get certified on the undergraduate level, if you come to Queens College after being here, and you get certified with us as an undergraduate, the state mandates that once you get certified as an undergraduate, you have to have your master's degree within 5 years of finishing that undergraduate degree. Okay? No, that's state of New York. That's state of New York. If you are a certified teacher and you have a bachelor's degree, you have 5 years from that initial certification to get a master's degree.
They extended it. There were a group of students.
No. Let me say this again, because I don't want people running off. If you leave here and you get your AA degree, and you come to Queens College, and you get licensed as a teacher on the undergraduate level with a bachelor's degree, you could teach. But if you want to continue to be a teacher, you have to get your master's degree within 5 years. Right? You have to get your master's degree in 5 years. Now, if you get, say for instance, you leave here, you come to Queens, you do another degree. You do English. You graduate with an English degree, and you want to come back to us to get certified as a teacher, right? Then you come into our MAT program, or Masters of Arts in Teaching, and then once you get certified through that program, you're done. Okay? But if you get certified on the bachelor's level, you have to get a master's degree at some point within 5 years. Is everyone clear on that? Do not leave and go, Dr. Turner said da-da-da-da-da. Okay? Yes, sir.
And you can get your master's from anywhere once you get certified.
Yes, you can. Now, research that I'm conducting right now, it's coming up inconclusive because I've done 2 studies. I believe that it's better to get a bachelor's degree in education and then go on and get a master's degree in education. One, because it means you've taken more education classes and you've received more training. One. Two, you student teach for 2 semesters when you're an undergraduate, where you do 1 semester as a graduate student. So to me, I personally think, I normally take what would be considered an MBA philosophy. If you look at the elite MBA programs, Harvard, Wharton, Kellogg, Fuqua, Duke, they do not accept anyone that doesn't have at least 5 years of work experience. And the thought process is, get your degree, work, and then when you come to us, we could take what you learned through actual working, give you more theoretical frameworks to work from, and make you a better business professional. I believe that in education. I think if you get out there and you start teaching with a bachelor's degree, and that for a few years, and then go get your master's degree, the things that I'm teaching you on the master's level, you'll completely be able to take to a whole nother level because you can relate to what I'm saying. Right? Because what I'm saying is, if you're in the classroom and then you're coming to me for a master's degree, and I sit there and I say is, if you have a student who's doing this and a student who's doing this, do this, this, and this. And then you could go back to your classroom the next day and do it. And then you come back to me like, it worked. And I'm like, I know.
And then they bring case studies to you.
Exactly. Exactly.
The reality of that situation, and that arms you to actually solve a real
Absolutely. 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 Now, that's the touchy-feely part of it. Now, what I get when people come into my office is, I need a job. I need to work. What's the fastest way for me to get certified? It's a very different question. If someone comes to my office and says, what's the fastest way for me to get certified? I tell them. I look at the transcript, and I go, this is what you need to do to be certified, right? But there's a difference between what's the fastest way for me to get certified and what do you think is the best way for me to become the best teacher possible? In many cases, it's 2 different things, right? Because any of you here, the easiest thing for you to do is be on the teacher education track here at Queensborough. Because normally, almost in every case that I've seen, when you guys come over to Queens, it's pretty seamless. It's not even pretty, it is seamless. You guys come in, you apply to get into the program, and then you're in it the next semester. The issues that I normally have is people coming over from Queensborough who didn't really take any education classes, one, or didn't get their AA degree. Especially now with the new PLI system that we have over at Queens, if you don't get your AA degree, we're not going to count a bunch of your classes. You know, so you could end up losing easily, and if I'm wrong, maybe 6 to 12 credits. Because because when I look at a form, and the first thing it says is, does this person have an AA degree from our community colleges? And if you do, I check it, and then it gives you a whole bunch of classes that we will take. But if you leave here early and come over to Queens, then at that point, there's only certain classes that you could take to advance through our basic proficiencies. So unless there's a definitive reason why you need to come to Queens before you finish here, stay here. It's cheaper to go here, right? Stay here. There's no reason to come to us. We'll be there. We're not going anywhere. Stay here. It seems like, this is my first time on campus. Hopefully that's my life. It seems great here. And if it's cheaper, I don't know about you, but common sense tells me if I can get a good education cheaper, then that's what I'm going to do, right? Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for inviting me out.
Thank you so much, Professor Turner. We really enjoyed your speech, your presentation. I know a lot of you have a lot to think about, and especially the ones in Professor Spradley's class. I know she's probably going to give you a pop quiz next time she sees you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.